I was told that you had a farm animal that was in need of a relaxing, grooming haircut. Alright, perfect. And what type of animal are we cutting today? A sheep. Alright, a pink sheep. Perfect. Now, are we going for a full shear, or are we just doing a traditional haircut? A traditional haircut. Perfect. Well, we can offer a full service haircut, including fragrance and hydration treatment prior to the cut, brushing, removal of damaged or cut wool, and it should leave your sheep looking its absolute best. How does that sound? Good. Well, I could assume that if you ordered a house call barbershop service that you were well aware of what we offer, but we always like to be professional and remind the customer of exactly what to expect. If you want to go ahead and go get your sheep, I'll get my barber table set up here and we can begin any moment. Okay, I'll see you in just a bit. Alright, we're just going to start with a bit of relaxing hydration spray. Just a couple of spritzes should do the trick. This is just to hydrate and prep the wool for the cut. Just going to mix it, give it a few shakes just to activate the inert ingredients just a bit. Just bear with me. I like to make sure that I take my time and deliver the highest quality cut and overall experience to whichever type of creature I'm working on. It should be almost ready. Alright, it is time. So we're just going to use a couple of spritzes to get your sheep prepared. Alright, that should do the trick. Let's just let that settle before we begin. Just going to give it a moment to briefly air dry before starting with the combing process prior to the cut. Alright, that should do it. Now the first thing that I'm going to do is begin with a broad toothed comb, stainless steel, and really adept at working its way through the thickness of the wool of a sheep. Even some of the more matted sheep wool that I've worked on in the past usually can be tamed with this comb. So this is the first comb that we will use. This is just to lift any spaced far enough apart that it can be used on thick and coarse material like wool. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're just going to start at the top of the head. And we're just going to gently brush out some of those unsightly pieces. And as you can hear, those sort of snagging sounds, that is the comb coming into contact with tangled portions of the wool or matted areas that need to be addressed. And these longer portions that show themselves after the comb has ran through the area, those are the pieces that we will try to trim. So I like to comb all in one direction first, and then work my way back the other way. So you notice, while we are still getting some snags, it's getting a lot easier to brush through, and that wool is starting to look a lot more fluffy and tamed. And doesn't actually pull the wool very much. It is quite enjoyable for the sheep. Okay, now we're going to start working our way back the other way. Once again, beginning with small brush strokes, because as we begin to work in the opposite direction, we're going to encounter a lot of those tangles that were brushed down in the other direction. So, I hope that you are enjoying this as well. It can be quite relaxing just to watch. Okay, now we're just going to start combing through in that opposite direction. I like to work just on one portion of the body at a time and then move on. As you can hear, those tangles are becoming a lot less frequent. Okay. So now we will just briefly lift each of those areas that we passed over and prepare it for the cut. Alright, so let's go ahead and move to the back, the area on the top, that kind of flat portion of the back. This is the area that's most commonly matted or tangled, just because it's harder for the sheep to get to, and it's brushing up against things or, laying on the ground. So we're going to work on that area. Really try to treat the wool there. So same process as before. Short so now we're just going to try to brush through those areas that we've treated with the initial brushing. As you can see, we are starting to identify some areas that need to be trimmed with the sheep wool. Unless you are going for a full shearing, you really just want to trim the areas that are standing out. That way, once you do shear the sheep, the wool is at a higher quality. Alright, so now we're just going to brush the opposite direction quickly here. And this will really help expose those unsightly portions. Same process as before. And now just gently lengthening our brush strokes here. Alright, and just like before, now we are just going to stand up that wool and prep it for the cut. Alright, next, just a quick snipping process. And what we are going to do, we are just going to trim those areas that have been exposed by the brushing process. And of course there will be wool that is flying, so you want to shield your eyes just a bit if you are sensitive to such things. And you're just looking for pieces that are really standing out. And don't worry about wool that is stuck in the generalized wool area. We will brush through this with a finishing comb to ensure that we get it all. I'm just going to just slightly adjust your, or I guess move your sheep. As you can see, we're starting to really get rid of some of those pieces that are longer than the others. So once again, just sit back and enjoy the process. And every once in a while, it's good to just run that comb through once more and really locate those areas as they like so, to remove any of that buildup. Try to look and make sure that we don't miss any really obvious pieces. There we are. And sometimes you just need to adjust your angle just a bit to make sure that you can see all of the areas. So don't be afraid to move around a bit if you ever need to do this yourself. But I do always recommend that you call a professional because it can be a bit tricky. Okay, and just a bit here on this other side should do the trick. The head area was actually not too bad, but the torso, as usual, was a bit unruly in areas. Alright, and with that, it's now time for the finishing brush. This brush will just gently and delicately fluff your sheep's wool and leave it looking soft and finished. It will also help remove any of that wool that we just cut that's resting and hiding within the healthy and untouched wool. These bristles are obviously a lot softer and densely packed, but they're not meant to detangle or anything like that. They're just meant to finish and soften up the remaining wool. So let's go ahead and begin. We're just going to gently pull that brush along the wool, and as you can see, there's already some of that cut wool that is being picked up and removed by this brush, and it will just stick inside those bristles, which makes it nice, and then you can just clean it out later. So just like before. We will go in one direction and then back the other way. And you want to maintain a tight hold on the sheep at this point in the process because this brush does have a snug pull on that wool, and it can, if you're not careful, pull your sheep right off of the table. Let's move a little bit more. Focus on the scalp. As you can see, that wool is beginning to look a lot softer, and this is just going to really help your sheep look its best and feel its best. Alright, and now back the other way. We will begin by pulling up the wool that's hanging over the forehead, and I'm just going to gently hold the front of your sheep right under its neck. Once we go that settle, soak in, and enjoy the fragrance. And that should do it. Thank you so much for using the Minecraft barber service. I really enjoyed treating your sheep, and hopefully if you have any other creatures or monsters that are in need of a good haircut,